Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here because today we're going to be talking about leadership journey, the C-suite leadership journey, and this is our second episode. So, two men, bring a paper, pen and paper because you're going to have so much nuggets and gold because we are having a really incredible and awesome guest speaker today. And before we actually call her back, I'm gonna share some little bit more about her stuff. So she is actually Joe Jackson has been teaching people how to get intimate with their elements for over 10 years. A qualified Marshall Goldsmith Executive Coach, one of the top 50 Jay Shetty life and success coaches. And also, she's a Master NLP Practitioner. Joe puts the different spin on high performance instead of ultimate and holistic approach. So today you're gonna learn so much incredible things for her. As a parent, a coach, an individual, Jo lives and breathes her truth by exemplifying high performance in her own life. So right now, help me, please join me. Welcome, Jo Jackson. Jo, I'm so excited for you to be here.
Much Candy.
I'm so excited to have you here, Jo. It's just incredible. When I share with people that I actually talk about, very good leaders and CEOs from different countries, people say and ask me the question, how do you do that? So here is you from Australia.
Exactly.
So how's everything going so far for you?
2022 is an amazing year. I set my intention back in October of 2021, and I expected 2022 to be the biggest year for myself personally and for my business. And as expected, that's exactly what's happened. So onwards and upwards from here. Obviously, it's October again. So the question is, what have I got set for 2023? And of course, it's continuous growth. My ultimate goal as an individual is for what I have coined smoother edges and boundless depth. And that is something that is definitely a part of all of the training that I do around self-intimacy and how it impacts personal performance, but also becoming aware that as an individual, whilst I learn to perform more, better, easier, I have a greater impact on the environment around me, on the community around me. And then as an ecological being, I then become something that gives a lot more than I take.
That is fantastic. So one word that actually caught my attention, and probably the audience for this group and the people who are watching right now, they were like, okay, so why is Joe Jackson using this word intimacy? What is that actually word? Because when I read it, I was like, okay, what is that, Joe?
It's crazy, right? It's almost like this dichotomy of, I'm sorry, intimacy is for relationships. And I'm not quite sure how intimacy ties into performance, because obviously when people think intimacy, they think sexual intimacy. That's the first place that we go. And that's what we've been taught. So it makes perfect sense. Intimacy becomes about something that you experience with somebody else. But long before you experience intimacy with somebody else, in order to have that intimacy with that person, and let's just step into the realm of sexual intimacy and go to tantric. If you want to learn about tantric sex, the first thing you need to understand is yourself and your partner, so you can have that amazing experience of that transcendent sex. But if you don't know yourself, then how can you have that experience with that other person? And it's exactly the same for performance. I see a lot of people that come in and work with me, and my first question is, what do you want? And every single time it's met with, oh, I want to be rich. And I'm like, awesome. What does that look like? I don't know. And that's intimacy. That's intimacy with yourself. A person that's intimate with themselves is going to be able to say, Joe, I want this, and it's going to feel like this, and it's going to look like this. And here's my timeline to have it. And here's how I'm going to make it happen. And here's the person I need to be to get there. And that is intimacy in a nutshell. We're rolling around on the face of the planet doing our thing like beautiful plastic bags in the wind. And then
Mm-hmm.
every now and again, we stop and realize that we don't have what we want, but we don't actually know what we want. We aren't
Yeah.
in tune with ourselves.
Yeah, that's totally true. And especially when we start our business, we sometimes feel like this is what I actually want, but actually we enjoy something different. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. My first few years in business was doing what I thought I wanted. And I kept coming up against this wall all the time. And then I'd be almost flat on my back again, just going, why isn't this working? And I kept trying and trying and trying. And then one day I had this epiphany. I actually don't like doing this. I don't like doing it this way. And even though I'd been suggested that this was the way to do it, and I have had friends that have had great success from doing it that way, I needed to understand that that way was not congruent to me at that point in time. And that's okay. I didn't need
Yes.
to replicate what I was seeing. I needed to go and find out what worked for me. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the journey was very much like that in the beginning. There was a lot of brick walls, and I didn't understand why they existed. And like most people, I blamed myself. Joe, you mustn't be doing it right. Joe, you must have missed something. Joe, you need to try harder. Joe, you need to give more. But I had it all backwards. I was trying to fit, what, as they say, a round peg into a square hole. And as we know, that just doesn't work. But because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't taking the time to stop and look at what I was doing, I was so busy doing,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand why it wasn't working until I stopped and started being and really looking at what I was trying to achieve and the method that I was using. And straight away, as soon as I tapped into my body, it told me emphatically, I don't like this.
Yes, that's basically one of the questions that I use a lot when I do my coaching too is that what exactly is your dream? You know, is like dream to test or test your dream. Basically, is that dream that you have or somebody else put that dream in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. And we always take on something from someone else until we become aware of ourselves. Often we will project the dreams of our parents or the dreams of our peers or what is happening in the people around us. And we go, yeah, that looks good. Let's just grab that. But we aren't actually connected with it. There's no intimacy with it. It's just a concept, an idea that sounds like it might work. So why not?
Exactly. So how do you actually start it? I know you meant, you know, I introduced you as a 10 years, but I believe that you become a leader way more before. So how that happened? What happened before? What the transition when you become an entrepreneur and who you are right now?
I actually gave this some thought, and I'm one of those people that has the amazing shower epiphanies, and I'm one of those test subjects that definitely fall into that. And I remember the first time I was referred to as a leader, and it was in a report card when I was in year four. My primary school teacher at the time actually said, Joe is a born leader. Now, at 9 years old, you have no idea what that means. And honestly, when I saw that, I didn't want it. I just started a new school. My life had been turned upside down that year. I didn't want a new teacher that I didn't know in a new school telling me that I was a leader. Instead, I just went, no, I no, that feels responsible to me. That feels accountable. That feels like I need to do all these things that I don't want to do. Can I just fit in? I don't want
Oh,
someone
wow.
standing me out. Just let me fit in with this school. This culture is very different and it makes me a little nervous. But that was the
Oh,
first time I heard the word leader used in relation to me, all the way back at 9 years old.
oh, wow. So what is leadership for you? What does that mean for you?
It's a really good question. You know, my version of leadership has changed with my level of awareness. And I can honestly say, once upon a time, my leadership style was high D on the DISC scale. In fact, I'll tell you something. When I was 21, I got my first DISC assessment when I was working for a corporation. I just got given a promotion into a leadership role, my very first official leadership role. And so they did a DISC assessment on me because I was going into leadership training. I did the assessment. The organization came back and said, you need to redo the assessment. I said, oh, what happened? I finished it. They said, we just need to retest you. Okay. So I went and did the assessment again. And then I sat about a week or so later with the person who does the debrief from the external organization that had run the assessment. And he says, I got to tell you, I've never seen results like yours before. We actually asked you to resit the test because on the scale of D, you're off the charts. In fact, you're so far off the charts, we don't have a measurement for you. And he showed me the squares with the D, the I, the S, the C, and the D comes out here, and my dot's out there.
Oh, wow.
And he said, we asked you to do it twice because we thought something must have been wrong with the software. But now I'm curious. He says, you don't look like a high D. I really want to understand why you are and what's made you that person, because the person that I see and the person that's on this piece of paper, they feel very different. So for me, that was a really interesting first awareness about my leadership style, because I was brought up in a family where my father was the head of the household, and it was do as you're told, don't ask questions. Do as you're told, don't ask questions. Even if you don't like it, you will do as you're told because he's the head of the house and that's the way it works. So I was brought up with that mentality. So therefore, in my mind, in my early 20s, when I become a leader, I assume the same militant role that my father had assumed. And then I brought that style into my leadership. Do as you're told because I'm the leader. And I expected to receive that from my leaders. So when I did, I didn't question. It's okay, okay. And they could have asked me to do anything and I would have done it because my belief at the time was that's the way it worked. But I'm very grateful for this assessment because it was this huge epiphany for me of, oh, what
Yes,
does that mean?
yes, I actually do. When everybody, any client, anybody who joins in my challenge, they actually have to go through this assessment because I want to know who they are, where they coming from. And one of the things that is pretty much when you were talking about the high D, mine was a high C. I was
Ah,
very analytical, very people oriented, but a super analytical. And that's why I was struggling with leadership. That's what I
yeah.
become like basically hungry, like what I can do to become even better. What can I do to relate to people? What can I do to actually be in front of people, be actually leading well my company? So that's when I actually had to go through, okay, you have to become and think this way. You have to read this book. You have to meditate this way. So it was like actually to become for CS right now an ID, which I still, talking about fun, party, the beach, having fun, but also I'm super direct with my team, especially when they have to complete tasks with my clients. I'm super direct too because I feel like it's the best way to
Mm.
lead them to the best of you. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you something, and this ties into the journey of smoother edges and boundless depth for me. The first time I became aware of masculine and feminine energies was about 5 years ago. I became very aware. I always knew that I had a masculine element to me, and that made sense. But I didn't realize how heavily masculine I was. And it was not long after my marriage had broken down, and somebody said to me, well, you did always wear the pants in that relationship. That was a shock to me because in my mind, we'd always had a balanced relationship. And even in his, my ex-husband's mind, we'd always had a pretty balanced relationship until everything started to go south. But it got me thinking about, well, if other people perceive me as the boss in the relationship, the one that's dragging everybody else along, what does that mean? So I started doing a little bit of exploration around that and having conversations around energetic types and archetypes around energy and masculine and feminine energies and how they fit in. And I realized that I was heavily masculine, not through any fault of my own, but because I wasn't ready yet to understand that. And now I was in this beautiful space where I was being shown that there's an opportunity to do things differently. So ever since then, I've been looking for ways to rewire my linguistics. How can I get the masculine outcome of the strategy and the task being achieved in a feminine way? So for me, it's therefore been about, it's gone from just do it in my 20s because I'm the manager and that's the way it works, to now I use softer language to achieve the same outcome. So now these days it looks a little bit like, I think it would work really well if we did X. What do you think? And then when the person
Exactly.
comes back and says, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm like, are you good to do that by the end of today? And almost always they're like, yeah, great. And it's achieving the same goal of the task being done. It's a lot less energetically taxing on me. The person who I am talking to, my employee, is included in the process because they've got choice in that question. And I used to avoid that because I was a dictator, but I didn't know it. Now, if they come back and say, actually, you know what? No, I can't do that today. My response to that would be, okay, great. What do we need to shift around so that you can? And my style is vastly different. I work with hundreds of people monthly and the work that I do as a contractor, and I work directly with C-suites and run events for them. And I work with people who don't have time, but they don't want to be dictated to. They want someone who's going to come in a servant leader mentality and say, okay, great. I've done this run sheet for you. Here's this piece here. I've given you some scripting. You can use it if you like, tweak it if you need to. The timing's this. So when it gets to this particular time, you're going to see me do this on my hand. That's a little subtle cue for you to move on to the next piece. And that's come from a person that would have said, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this. And I would have got the executive offside. But now I come back from a how can I help you make it easier, as opposed to you just need to get this done.
Yes, yes, that's a shift. And I believe that has been one of the challenges that you have as a leader, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we all become aware of when the time is right. And it does require, especially in my case being such a high D, it does require constant attention. But the biggest trick for that for me has been to not judge myself when I reflect and say, yeah, I could have done that differently. It's never you should have done that better. It's always, I could have done that differently. I could have this or I could have that. So there's never that judgment associated with it. It's always that observation of self and teaching myself.
Great, great. So, for example, if we have somebody who is a leader, but that person, he or she is a CS, and they want to become more like a D mentality, D language, what will you say that it will be the best for them to actually reach out to that level?
Yeah, the fundamental difference between a D and an S is almost always confidence, which comes from a lack of worthiness or a perception of self-worthiness or a lack of assurance within yourself. So fundamentally, anybody that's moving into a D space or needs to move into a D space, I say a couple of things. First of all, Ds are not bosses. So think about the boss, the one that tells you what to do. That's an old school D. A new age D, for lack of a better term, is a person who can utilize the language and be a dominant language type without being a bully. So when I go in and I say to one of my employees, hey, you know what, Shane, I'd really appreciate it if you can get this done for me today. I know it's last minute, but it's just come up. Can you make space? So that's me being D in the tone that I'm using. It's very clear that I need to get it done, but he still has choice. Now I can also come into that same situation saying, I'm so sorry, Shane, this is what's happened today. You need to get this done. Drop everything. And he's not going to feel like he's got choice. Now, both of those may work because if you're talking to a person who's a high D who likes to be spoken to directly, you might literally go and say, Shane, you need to get this done today. You've got 2 hours. Drop everything. And he might be fine with that. But if you're moving from an S and a C, typically, because we are all different, even though we have genetic consistent makeup, there are components of us which are varied, and that's what human beings are. If you need to move from an S or a C into a D, then it's about being confident in yourself. What am I trying to achieve? How do I want to achieve that? When do I want to achieve it by? Answering those 3 questions before you go into the conversation will definitely help. Then taking into consideration the person receiving the message. Are they a high D? In which case they're not going to want you to go in all fluffy. Or are they the type of person that's a little bit of an I, that's busy with other stuff and they want to have the chit chat first, and managing your style according to their style. Whereas typically leadership 20 years ago was all about, I'm the boss, you need to fit in with my style.
Yes, exactly, exactly. They have to fit in everybody's own personality, language, and it's not about them, it's about, the other person. So
Yeah.
really beautiful. So what do you think about what has been in you grow as a leader? Have you been in conferences going taking what books are you reading? What are the things that you as a woman CEO leader, what have you used to actually continue in that leadership growth?
Vishen from Mind Valley says this beautifully, and it's so perfect. He got asked by Tom Bilyeu in a podcast. I don't even know how long ago, and it was, "What is your number one piece of advice for success? What's the one thing that you think that people absolutely must do to be successful?" And then Vishen said, "It's not family, it's not money, it's not health. It is that you make your growth a priority every day." He said the number one goal that you should have is to grow every single day. And that is the priority. That is the non-negotiable. He says, you've got other things under it, but that is the I must do every single day. And so I adopted that mentality quite some time ago. I went and did Tony Robbins UPW. And I never heard of Tony Robbins. And when he first dropped into my Facebook feed, I Googled him and went, yeah, he looks like my type of guy. But I didn't want to know anything more about the 4 days. I went on my own. I met so many people there that I'm still friends with now. But for me, it was about my experience. I wanted to immerse myself in it, and I didn't want to be responsible for anybody else's experience. I go to events. So I just did a 3-day speaker course with the International Speaker of the Year for 2022, Sherry Eilertson. I'm going to meet Dave Goggins in February next year. I met Tom Bilyeu, I met Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I ask these people questions when I get the opportunity. Tell me more about how you do it. Tell me more about what works. My biggest influence at this current point in time, besides Jay Shetty, because I'm a member of his internal coaching group called Genius. I've been in Genius for about 4 years, is my meditation teacher. His name is Tom Cronin, and he teaches Vedic meditation. Now, it might seem a little unusual, but the reason why Tom is my biggest influence right now is because he's helping me towards those smoother edges and that boundless depth. Because I know that within that depth is that potential me, that higher version of me that has so much to offer the world, that I want to explore her. I want to find her. I want to bring her out and understand how she can create a beautiful footprint on the world, as opposed to being someone who's constantly expecting the world to give to me.
That is beautiful. You know, it's incredible how growth is important. And some people take it for granted because they said, I already know this. I've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and they just stop growing. They don't go to conferences, they don't read anything, they don't join the challenges, you name it, they don't do anything. They just say, I already know this. So what would you say to this person who actually is on the fence of growth? They don't know if they need to grow. They don't know if they need to step up and to move forward and continue the growth journey as a leader. What would be the 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you will give them?
Self-assessment. That's definitely a time for self-assessment. I run everything by elements. So I have multiple elements that we measure by in the program that I run. And that's designed specifically as check-ins. We do 90-day check-ins, we call GPS points. And it's about, where am I at with this? Where am I at? So if you're finding yourself at any stage in life, at any situation, that you're gray on something, you're not sure on something, that's a trigger for self-assessment. And it's usually come from a place of change. Something's changed and you are upset by that. You're in conflict with it because it's not behaving the way you're used to it behaving. All of a sudden your body's going, or your mind is even saying, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right.
So when they don't feel right, what exactly they are not feeling? What would be the typical feeling?
Discontent. So you might be doing something that you've done before and suddenly it's boring, or you're realizing that it's not giving you any satisfaction. A key trigger is when you notice that you're starting to notice more negatives about the environment that you're in than positives. That's a definite trigger for self-assessment, because something has shifted in you. And that's where the intimacy comes in, to know yourself so well to go, something shifted. I'm looking at this differently today. I wonder why I'm looking at this differently. What has changed? And more often than not, you'll be able to pinpoint it to an event or a new piece of learning or something that will have shifted your perception on that particular thing. If you're looking at changing your job, if you're looking at leveling up, if you're not sure whether you should, I'll give you this. If you think that you potentially could level up, but you're not sure, the sheer fact that you're thinking about it means that it's available to you. So it's not about should I, it's about am I willing to?
Exactly. That is the best advice. Oh my God. How many clients I had the same thing, the same mindset. They're like, I don't know, I'm thinking about this. Just do it. Just go for it. Just
Yeah,
go for it. Don't
absolutely.
overthinking. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you have to create a movie, what will be the name of the movie? And what will be the main message that you will give to the leaders in this movie?
I love movies. I just introduced my 13-year-old daughter to the Divergent series, and
Oh,
she
really?
loves it. We watched the whole Matrix series. When the last Matrix came out last year, we went and watched the fourth one, and then we went and watched the three previous to get ourselves refreshed. I tell my children that movies are a prequel to the future. So if you see something in a movie that looks far out, that's like a prophecy. And whatever you're seeing in that is in the future. It will come because that's how movies are designed. So if I were to write a movie, I would call it Infinitely Dangerous.
Infinitely dangerous. That's kind of cool. What will be the main
Yeah.
message for the
The main
leaders?
message of Infinitely Dangerous is this: we are, in fact, infinite, but we spend our time not considering our options. And that is the dangerous part. The danger is that we sit on our hands. The danger is we accept the status quo. The danger is we take the blue pill in Matrix language. When in actual fact, the people who choose to be infinitely dangerous in the way that it's meant, they step in with courage to everything that comes to them. They know that no matter what happens, they can handle it. They know that they have evidence in their lifetime of overcoming every single adversity that has come to them. And they have a grounded sense of self. They're connected to their source, whatever you identify source as. For me, I'm a Christian. I identify source as God. And so I connect with my God every single day because that keeps me aligned. And I know that when I'm not connected, I start to feel lost. So the premise of Infinitely Dangerous is this: as a leader, we all have the capacity to be something more, but we get stuck. We get stuck in the now, we get stuck in the busy, we get stuck in the hamster wheel. But those of us who choose to be intimately dangerous will be the ones who get intimate with ourselves. We will, one by one, overcome every single obstacle, and you'll get this sweet spot where suddenly the things that you used to view as problems, you now view as opportunities. And all of the things that used to stress you out at night no longer do, because you know that no matter what happens tomorrow, you're in a beautiful space of alignment and you have absolute faith in the future that you are creating.
Amazing. Thank you, Joe. Oh my God. This like I'm completely out of words. I knew that you were coming and give so much gold to this group and to the community who are watching right now. Then just remember, if you have any questions to Joe, anything related to the how you can become even more intimacy with yourself, especially as a leader, connect with Joe. Is there any other place that they can connect with you, Joe?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm under Joe Jackson, the Performance Architect. Or you can also find me on Instagram, Joe Jackson Coach, if you're looking to get to know me a little bit differently. Most of my content you'll find on either Facebook or on LinkedIn. And I have a group. My Facebook group is called the Mastery Movement, because in order to be an ecological being on this planet, we first of all need to be part of a movement. And in order to make significant change, we need to become masterful.
Exactly. That is completely gold. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate your time today. This has been amazing. I just want to say, guys, remember, just like, comment, share because this is incredible. You guys don't know how much stuff you can come out with. Joe is amazing. And thank you for watching. Remember, live from your heart because that's where the magic happens. Thank you, guys.